Farigiraf, the evolution of Girafarig introduced in Generation 9, may be my favorite new Pokemon from the Paldea region. This cute little space cadet is pretty bulky and has a powerful unique ability, Armor Tail, that lets it block priority moves like Fake Out, Sucker Punch, and Aqua Jet from affecting your Pokemon. This is a powerful ability, especially on a Pokemon that wants to set Trick Room, and Farigiraf has been legal since the first tournament of Scarlet and Violet, so I'm sure with such a unique powerful ability and moveset combination, it must have been good from the very beginning, right? Well, that's where things start to get weird. There were 2 Regulation A regionals, the first format of competitive Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Combining the top 128 from both events, we only end up with 4 Farigirafs. That is literally less Farigiraf than were in top 16 of the Charlotte Regional Championships in mid-January of this year. So, what's going on? Did everyone just take a long time to figure out how strong Farigiraf is, or is something else going on? That's what we're going to look at today, but first, more of a breakdown on the Pokemon. Farigiraf's stats and move pool inherently lend itself to being more of a defensive supportive Pokemon. Its typing, Normal and Psychic, help it in that way. While it's not great defensive typing for resists, only 2 types hit it for super effective damage, Bug and Dark. Very few neutral hits are going to one-shot you because you're so bulky, but at the same time, it's not quite as good at this role of taking a few neutral hits and setting up Trick Room as some other available options, like Porygon 2, Cresselia, or Dusclops. To make Farigiraf worthwhile, you need to be getting a lot of value out of Armor Tail, at least most of the time. Priority moves are always strong at VGC, but if they're being used fairly to pick off weakened foes or only really punish you after a setup like, say, Swords Dance King Gambit, that's the sort of thing you need to beat by outplaying, not by dedicating a whole move slot on your team. For the most part, in the first 2 regulations of Scarlet and Violet, priority moves took the form of these more fair options. Sure, there was the occasional Terra Normal Extreme Speed, and plenty of Palafin Jet Punches, but that's about it.
Aaron only has the Farigiraf left here too to be able to bring in, but kind of interesting to see that one come through.
Yeah, Farigiraf is interesting because it does block those priority extreme speeds from the Dragonite, but Dragonite might just be content ending this game with Dragon Claws at this point in the match. The advantage of the lack of protects.
Honestly, I expected Farigiraf to do a lot more than it did, and after game 2, I realized, okay, this is not working, I need to switch it up.
But then, in Regulation C, Chien-Pao became legal. Chien-Pao's ability, Sword of Ruin, lowers the defense of all other Pokemon on the field by 25%, and people were sure the priority spam with this powerful damage amplification tool would be powerful. And they were right, but Farigiraf still isn't that popular.
The only thing that I'm nervous about is this Farigiraf now that it's next to the Chien-Pao. I mean, the Sword of Ruin ability will lower all the defenses going for Trick Room in the previous games.
But then, this time for real, in Regulation D, we got access to a bunch of new Pokemon that would finally give Farigiraf its place. Tornadus, Urshifu, Rillaboom, and Heatran all became legal, and each made Farigiraf more viable in its own way. Tornadus, as a user of Prankster Taunt, made Pokemon like Cresselia a little awkward to use as a Trick Room setter, because you would have to commit either a Mental Herb as your held item, or Terra Dark on your Cresselia to prevent Tornadus from shutting you down with Priority Taunt. Farigiraf doesn't have that problem, because Armor Tail will block the Priority Taunt. Heatran is a great bulky Pokemon that can serve both as a Pokemon that can take a hit and deal damage back, or serve as a Trick Room sweeper. This is exactly the kind of piece that Farigiraf wants. And Rillaboom serves a similar role, but with the added benefit that can fake out an opposing Pokemon to help guarantee Trick Room. Note that Iron Hands also can, and often does, fill that role in a Farigiraf team. So now, Farigiraf handled a common meta way to disrupt Trick Room, Tornadus, and was given 2 new toys that do well in its Trick Room mode, Rillaboom and Heatran. What about Urshifu, who was on my list too? Well, Urshifu Rapid Strike often really likes to run a Choice Scarf to make sure it's hitting first with its devastating close combats and surging strikes. But if you run that set, you put yourself at risk of being faked out. And because Urshifu's bulk is only okay, the chances of being faked out by one of your opponent's Pokemon, then KO'd by its partner, is a pretty serious threat. Farigiraf allows you to prevent that kind of disruption, and once it was legal, would also serve as a way to protect Urshifu from the devastating Grassy Glide, a priority Grass-type attack that threatens to Oko Urshifu in the right situation. The best Farigiraf's teams blend these 2 upsides of the Pokemon by having a slow Trick Room option that takes advantage of how consistently it can twist the dimensions in the face of Tornadus and other speed control, and a fast mode that protects itself and its partners from priority moves on what would otherwise be generally frail Pokemon to make sure they get to hit first and hit hard. This is essentially what the second place team at the 2023 Worlds did, using Farigiraf to enable a Trick Room mode with Rillaboom and Heatran, and to enable a fast mode with frail physical attackers like Chien-Pao, Dragapult, and Urshifu Rapid Strike. It was a strong meta choice then, and as priority moves and hyper offense teams continued to become more and more popular in Regulations E and F, with the introduction of Grassy Glide and Thunderclap as scary priority moves, and Tornadus' ever-consistent presence, Farigiraf has seen more and more play. Now, it's not that people suddenly realize Farigiraf is strong. and that people yelling about it from the rooftops were right from the very beginning. Rather, it's that the metagame has shifted, and a Pokemon that is untauntable by the most popular taunt user punishes the omnipresent Tailwind with Trick Room, and protects your Pokemon from broken priority moves like Thunderclap, Terranormal Extreme Speed, and Grassy Glide lines up perfectly right now. As power levels go up in a Pokemon game, Pokemon that had been an option earlier in the season often rise to prominence because they have specific tools to tackle a more defined metagame. As power levels go up, the amount of genuinely viable Pokemon go down. Sure, you could try to use Kilowattrel or Talonflame or Murkrow as your Tailwind setter right now, but why would you when you have access to Tornadus? For example, in Series 12 of Pokemon Sword and Shield, where you were allowed to have 2 devastatingly powerful legendary Pokemon, Shedinja was quite good, because one of the most popular team configurations, Kyogre, Zacian, Kartana, Amoonguss, Landorus T, and Rillaboom, only had 2 Pokemon to hit Shedinja through Wonder Guard. In earlier formats, Generation 8, Shedinja was not nearly as good, because the format was a lot wider. You couldn't guarantee you'd play against a specific style of team enough times in the tournament that your niche tech Pokemon was worth a slot as opposed to just another generically good Pokemon. Another great example of when this has occurred is Dry Skin Parasect serving as a great answer to Kyogre in 2010. Being both water immune thanks to its ability, and packing both Wide Guard and Spore, it was a great answer. These are Pokemon that outside of their specific metagames that lined up just right probably wouldn't be very good. I believe Farigiraf is another in that lineage, but I could be wrong. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks.